by my training. One social anthropologist, Clifford Gibbs, said that religion or faith, if you prefer this word, because I remember your yesterday's preach too, Father Gregory, that religion or faith does not teach how to avoid suffering. Religion or faith teaches how to suffer. And Xenia became a sort of model for suffering, especially for female suffering. And it is very important for women in Russia, this part of historical hagiography where we can read about her husband, because maybe you read the story and you know that the husband died unexpectedly and he did not have the last confession, how it would work, yes, which is for a religious person is a sort of not a sin but a sort of pity, am I right? And the idea is that in today's Russia, women are those who save souls of their husbands, because husbands are absent in the church life. So this is how Xenia's hagiography, Xenia's life is interpreted by believers in Russia nowadays. This is one of the reasons why she's so popular. Another reason is that she looks like an ordinary city dweller. She is like a neighbor and like a friend. And you can see how she is depicted. You can recognize real landscape of St. Petersburg, not imagined one, but real landscape. You can see St. Paul and Peter and Paul Cathedral, and this Alexandrinsky stole. How to put it in English? Petya, you know, of course. Yeah, okay. Sometimes, yeah, and of course a lot of sea. Sometimes you can see here depicted in the landscape, again, real landscape, not imagined, of the cemetery where she is buried. And here you can see her chapel. And this is the church, Smolenskaya Bozhyi Materi, and she helped to build this particular church in this story about Ruth. And this picture, Xenia, is depicted as a young woman, actually. And I think that icon which you have in your church, on this icon, she looks very similar to this. Again. By the way, maybe it's interesting for you that the colors which she has on her dress, jacket, and skirt are colors of Preobrazhensky Polk, where her husband used to служить, used to, yeah. And so Xenia the Blessed is really very, very popular saint in Russia, and she's a saint of people who live in the cities and who have, for some reason, no time, energy, or wish to go to church and to participate in church parish life regularly. So she's a sort of saint for irregular believers, if I can put it in this way. And there are a lot of very nice songs addressed to Saint Xenia, songs which tell about suffering. And I have a disc with these songs with me, but tomorrow when I will present some speech to the sisterhood, I will present to you the disc. And one of the and there are some stories about miraculous appearance of Xenia the Blessed to some of the believers. I will give you one example and then small quotation from a song, and then I will shut up and open floor for your questions. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is a story which you can find in books which are printed and in some newspapers which are published by this parish. This particular story I read in internet met in the website devoted to Ksenia the Blessed. I met Ksenia the Blessed in the underground metro 2 years ago. She came into the carriage at Lesnaya station and alighted at Finland railway station. In the carriage, she blessed people loudly, asking only for 1 ruble, which is almost nothing nowadays. She wore a faded pink coat and green skirt. I had the luck to talk to her. She said to me, "Don't rely upon might, but the God's will only." Says always, God is up and down, on your right and on your left, in front of you and behind of you. This was like in the dream, and I asked her, "Are you Ksenia?" And she laughed with a thin little voice. People in the carriage got excited. "This is Ksenia, this is Ksenia," and started opening their wallets. And she said something to everybody, very distinctly and loudly. I don't know how to, what to think about such kind of evidences. But, at any rate, these evidences, they are part of the whole, culture of veneration of Ksenia the Blessed. And finally, small citation from the song. "O Ksenia Блаженная, you had so much patience. You suffered privations and misfortune. You suffered for us. Матушка Ksenia, Mother Ksenia, strengthen me in my patience. Help me to withstand my terrible grief. O Ksenia Блаженная, you are so tired. You are tired of suffering and crying for everyone. Mother Ksenia, I am absolutely exhausted, and I want to withstand with your grateful help." So I think I'll stop here, and I will be very glad if you have questions, comments.
Does anyone have questions for...
Not John Hill.
John Hill! John Hill, please.
Thank you, Father Gregory. Thank you, Zhanna. Okay, cross-dresser, fortune teller, activities that in different circumstances are generally censurable in an Orthodox environment. How do you understand how the Church justifies this, or as a secular academic, what do you think is going on in cases? Maybe generalize a little bit if there are other, if you know, like other saints or that happens where.
How the Church?
Well, cross-dressing, мужские одежды одевала и.
Cross-dressing. Okay. I have to say that that when you when you Google Ksenia the Blessed icons, you have plenty of icons of Ksenia the Blessed, and very few of them are where she is depicted in this military uniform. So this image of Ksenia is unpopular because it is too, I don't know, strange or
Radical, I would say.
bizarre or radical, But the idea is actually clear. The idea is that she is блаженная. Блаженная or блаженный is a person who have sort of insight, and she or he does something which looks strange, bizarre, or even wild. But this is because people cannot understand, cannot recognize sanctity in this person. Only later. Sorry? Of course, yeah.
So let me just so everybody understands.
Maybe you know better,
So everyone understands what she's talking about. She's talking about fools for Christ, right? That they're this particular, very rare kind of saint. Just so the English speakers understand exactly what you're.
Fools for Christ.
Yeah. She's a fool for Christ. Yes.
And the fortune telling?
Part of that.
Part
of it.
And and the fortune telling. The fortune telling is quite widespread, I would say, in hagiography, because this is again a sort of evidence of the insight of a person. It means that this person person is chosen by God and he or she has a communication with God or with, superior entity.
And maybe that's the difference, John, that it's not so much fortune telling, but insight. That a spiritual insight is not, she didn't say, give me money and I'll tell you the future.
Or had to do something, sort of things, and,
She wasn't reading the intestines of cats to figure out.
But like, I think it means that she and people who saint like her, they know, or they almost know, or they know the God's decision, God's will about each person. I don't know.
Let me say something here so that we aren't losing track. So when we talk about saints who can see into the future, it's not like the lady with the crystal ball and the funny earrings, that you go to and you want to find out how many children you'll have or whatever. It's a completely different idea. The clairvoyance of the saints is because they're already living partially in the next world. There's no time in heaven. So everything that happens is in an instant to God. I mean, there's no differentiation between past and present and future. And so the church understands that those people who live such a life that they begin to already live in the next world begin to understand the future just like it's the present, because that's the way it will be in the next life. So that's how we understand from the spiritual point of view how this person can tap into what's going to happen necessarily in the future. So hopefully that clarifies it. Ruth?
would that be like with Elder Isidore? He was considered to live out of the world, and was said when people went to him for confession, before they would even speak, he knew what they were to confess, and he would kind of answer them.
There's a tradition in the monastic spiritual fathers in some places, especially like Optina is probably the best known one, I would say, in the Russian tradition, where for whatever reason the Lord blesses the spiritual fathers there to be able to somehow live in that next world on some level, so it doesn't mean they know the lottery ticket numbers, but they understand the spiritual implications for you in your life. And so it's not an unlimited magical quantity. It's an ability that the Lord sometimes gives, very rarely, so that people can otherwise help others. Right? It's not something you do for card tricks and table tricks at parties. It's something that this saint would use to help people spiritually. So do you see the difference? Sorry to
No, thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, please.
I would like to say a couple of words about the veneration of Saint Ksenia during the Soviet time. Those who were not in St. Petersburg and never seen this chapel actually did not exist at that time. It was ruined during the Soviet time to the ground, and more of that. The whole place was encircled with the fence, wooden fence, board to board. You can't look through, okay? And it is tall enough. So, one way or another, and by the way, it was guarded by militia, not in the sense that 24 hours guard, but they observed it, regularly. Nevertheless, all these letters, these notes, people managed to throw over the fence. From time to time, they tear a couple of boards, and they hang on one nail. You can move it and then put it in place. So it looks like it's untouched, but actually people, during the nights or whatever, they can get in and put flowers there.
And
Obviously,
candles.
yes, and notes and everything. So, and obviously on the second day or what, this militia or whoever came, clean it all. If they found a hole, they put these nails in. And that's what happened years and years and years. So it's a huge, как бы сказать, подвиг. Huh?
Struggle.
Deed. Oh.
But a huge struggle, right? Huge struggle, which actually people won, because after the time, the fence disappeared first, then they restored the chapel. Everything, все вернулось на круги свои.
And how did you get pictures of only two people? Most of the time you get there and there's lines and lines and lines all the way around.
Maybe now.
No, I mean now these are contemporary pictures. Usually it's just.
Other questions before we start side conversations? Any other questions for Zhanna? This is kind of a rare opportunity. Father Michael wants to say something.
I have a question, but before that I wanted to proceed. Konstantin Vladimir was right, because when I studied there, the first year they still had those fences there, and that's what people used to do to go around them. They put candles up in the niche there and things like that, and many different people went to pray there, including seminarians who were asking for a blessing to get married. I did that on Agdanya Paski one day. But what I wanted to say was that fools for Christ's sake, the church is very discerning in who is a bona fide fool for Christ's sake and who is not. There are a lot of imitators out there who are trying to imitate Vladimir, Ksenia, and others. There was a very famous one in St. Petersburg back in the 70s, maybe you've heard of her. They called her Vladimir Serafima. And she used to come into the church services at the academy where I was studying, and she would distract people from praying, because she would go up and venerate the icons. She'd take off, a kerchief, and there'd be another kerchief under that, and she'd take off like 7 kerchiefs, and just all this kind of utility stuff. And Metropolitan Nicodim of blessed memory finally had some of the seminarians who were quite big, and I think they were boxers in the former life, take her out, because she wasn't doing this to bring shame upon herself, which is what a fool for Christ's sake does, to humiliate himself. She was actually distracting people from the services. And so you have to be very careful. And I think the church is very careful in the way they discern who is a bona fide fool for Christ's sake. But I had a question. When I was there, there was a I don't know what they call it, Berdani or whatever, that on Smolenski Kladviще, there was this Malinkai Kalma, and they said that it was, or hill, and they said it was a mass grave of 40 priests that were executed. And I was wondering, have they done anything with that? And have they been reinterred or anything like that?
No, actually, this cemetery is a very interesting place, because we have this big chapel of Saint Ksenia, but there are also some smaller places. Maybe you've heard about Maria Gachinskaya, who was recently canonized. She was also buried there, but she was like перенесена to Gachin. And I know about this grave, of course, but as far as I know, and I visit this cemetery 5-6 times a year, there is still a small handmade something, like there are 40 priests who were killed by communist fatalists, which sounds still strange, quite strange, so no. No.
It's still
Not yet.
It's still a place of veneration?
It's still a place of veneration, but there are not many people who are coming there. But still, if you come there, you can find traces of veneration, like 1 or 2 or 3 candles and candies, because we have this habit of venerating of dead with these candies and coins.
I got one. Zhanna, is there a Ritier of Ksenia, and if so, who wrote it? And since she died in the 19th century, 18th century, based on what documents or recollections was the Ritier written?
Very good question.
Jitia is life for English speakers. Jitia means life, the life of the saint.
Yeah, life, which deserves actually a long answer, but I'll try make it short. There are no documents about Ksenia Blessed. So the her Jitier, her life, was written on the basis of stories, say rumors, which started appearing in the middle of 19th century, which means that 60, 70 years after her death. So this is an answer. And first variants of her biography, not hagiography yet, appeared in 19th century, but she was canonized later. First, she was canonized by the Russian Orthodox Church abroad in 1961, I think. I'm not sure, it was 71. So somebody, I don't know who, unfortunately, composed the canonical life of Cecilia. And I have to say that what is really interesting that there are at least 3 archivists to Saint Cecilia, which are quite different between them, and it's unclear which is canonical. But it means that the saint is really alive, and veneration is really very, very vivid.
Yes, vivid, yeah.
Yeah. So, is it an answer?
Before we finish, actually, I want to say something just briefly about that. No one here would probably know, but before the church abroad started to glorify saints, it was a very, the bishops were really of two minds. Because you have to understand that the church abroad, you have to remember, we knew this a long time ago, but we've forgotten. The church abroad was created only as a temporary entity to go back to Russia as soon as communists will fall on themselves. They thought it would be a few years and they'll just go back. Well, time goes on and goes on and goes on, and it becomes clear that the church outside of Russia has freedom to do stuff that the church inside Russia doesn't. But still, within the hierarchy, there was a really strong discussion, and they didn't know what, they were having trouble deciding. So finally, they glorified St. John of Kronstadt, and shortly after that, St. Xenia. But I think it's very interesting for you to know that they were really of two minds. Some of the bishops just thought, okay, we should do it, we're free, we can do it, but especially the older bishops, it seems, were very reluctant. They realized that the glorification was something that should be done by a local church, a whole local church, not just a piece of a local church. It's true that there are local glorifications on a diocesan level, and so that's how they decided that it would be all right. But I just found, when I read that and studied that, I found it very interesting that it was not an easy decision. It was a difficult decision. It took a long time, and they discussed it a lot before they finally decided that they would do that. But they also thought that it would be helpful for people in Russia. And so that's one of the reasons why they did it. John?
So when the reunification took place, did Rokor and the Patriarchy have to reconcile saints at the last minute, or was that already?
Oh, that was part of it. Yeah, that was part of it. But that was not a very difficult thing to do, because since the time that the Soviet Union died, closed up shop, went away, I'm not exactly sure the right word to use, since it ended, the church has had plenty of time to openly glorify people, and so there was very little difference between the two. And the only one actually might have been St. John of San Francisco, I believe, but he was very quickly recognized, and he was already widely venerated in Russia. When we went in 2004, we went with icons of St. John, and believe me, they were very, very happy to receive those icons wherever we went.
Before the Orthodox Church makes a statement, or do they make a statement that someone is a saint, do they follow the same procedure that the Roman Rite does? I mean, it's really litigious. They're very careful with that.
As you might guess, it's not as legalistic. You know, so the question is, what's the process? Is it the same as in the Roman Catholic Church? It's similar, but it's different. So in the Roman Catholic Church, if I'm not mistaken, there is a set number of miracles that must be verified. In the Orthodox Church, of course, there's nothing like that. You know, there has to be a pattern. It has to be, it has to be something that happens again and again and again. And so it's not like you hit this threshold and you're glorified. It's nothing like that. It's something it's a pattern that happens over and over, and it repeats again and again. And it's a bottom-up process in general, where the people are petitioning the bishops to glorify someone. Did I say that recently about St. John of San Francisco? I can't remember. anyway, that's how it happened with St. John of San Francisco. The bishops were receiving letters and petitions and people pleading, showing all the miracles that were coming from St. John. And some of those bishops knew him. They were bishops with him. And so they were very reluctant to do it because the church's tradition is to usually wait at least 2 generations so that everybody who knew that person is dead. And so that the glorification can't be an opportunity for pride or someone else who happened to know the saint. You can imagine how that happens. Oh yeah, I knew St. John and this and that. It's very difficult. So it was done, but there was a lot of reluctance for that reason, because people felt like, the bishops felt like it was too soon, but the call was so strong that they couldn't visit a parish without having people just, like handing them letters and all these things that, certified of these miracles. And it was just such a strong pressure on them that they decided to have the glorification. And that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be, it's not like the bishops all get together and say, well, we knew him, he was a pretty good guy, let's glorify him. It doesn't happen like that. Although in the ancient church, you might be interested to know, when there were great theological controversies, any bishop who died without leaving the faith was considered a saint. Because there were such great theological controversies. That's not the case anymore. So.
When did that end? With the restoration of the icons?
It was probably about that time. It was in different localities, there were different practices, but when there were the great theological controversies, Christological controversies, Trinitarian controversies, it was considered already a great, almost miracle to live your whole life and die without leaving the faith.
And people who, hierarchs who left were anathematized automatically?
For the most part, yeah. Okay, I'm taking all Zhanna's time. Do you have any other questions for Zhanna? Yeah.
What got you interested in specifically Saint Xenia to study? I know you study about a lot different other saints, but what is most specific for you in Xenia?
For me as an academician, that's because I'm really interested in I'll try to explain it. I'm interested in how the Orthodox Church, we have. I can't say that we have empty churches. No, that's not true. But I can say that we have churches full of believers. But at the same time, 75% of population of Russia. Remember that there are Buddhists and Jews and Muslims too. So 75% of the whole population of Russia claim they are Orthodox believers. But the priests say that not more than 1% of this 75% are churchgoers. So where are the rest of these people? This is my academic question. Where are the rest of the believers? And the other question is the question which I cannot answer, of course, because I'm not a church hierarch. So can we think that those people who are not in the church at least once a month, that they are believers? But we have this is a fact, social fact, that people do not go to the church, but they go to venerate saints. They go to venerate stars. They want to experience sacred. They want to have their spiritual life in the frame of the church.
But isn't that the scariest thing, I think?
Scariest?
At some point? Yes.
For me, not.
Well, because, that's what, a lot of Protestants say about, you Orthodox, with your saints, who are the saints, they're, why you couldn't venerate, people, or like Jewish, they would say, why you have icons, images, so why you venerate them? You have to venerate only God, one God, right? I mean, isn't that kind of like a little bit scary that they would go to venerate, saint, but not go to church to actually, venerate
But
God?
Zhanna mentioned that she addressed that, she talked about благочинный отец Victor, who runs, and that he said better that they are at least venerating the saints and not in some other way. I mean, it brings them at least closer, and I think that that's a good.
I think they miss something.
But and I have to say that when you read the historical sources, like from 19th century, it was always the same when the priest, the clergy, had to again struggle for the souls of the flock or of the future flock, who So this is sort of ongoing process. This is why the church is alive. So.
But I read on the internet, for example, that many priests actually disapprove this practice of venerating, stars and saints, specifically, relics, because they see it more like a magical thing, and afraid that people approach it too mystical. So it's like magic. I prayed to Saint Ksenia, I got the whatever bag of money. So basically, how widespread is it? How widespread is it? You meeting this approach from priests saying it's not very healthy.
It depends on whether the priest and his parish has this kind of shrine in the parish or not. And I did research in one local village sacred site where local village people believe that there is a God's footprint on a stone. And they say that it was some time ago, in 19th century or whatever, it was an apparition of the Mother of God, and this is a footprint which is a trace of her. So one priest said this is a superstition, how it would happen. But another priest, whose church, this is a village, whose church is really empty, and whose flock is there, close to this stone, he organizes church procession with Christ, Kristny Chod, to this particular place and explains people then when they come to venerate this particular place, they venerate not the stone, but they venerate the Mother of God and the God. So it's, people are different.
Like trying to use it.
So yeah, of course.
John?
Just real quick, are there relics of Saint Ksenia, and if so, did they have any interesting story, or were they pretty much always just in the cemetery there?
When she was canonized in 1988, the procedure of opening the relics, it was not made.
What was it done?
It wasn't. There was nothing done because of the time. They couldn't. The Soviet authorities wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, it wasn't done, the procedure. So we don't have relics, or we believe that they were in this chapel.
But they knew where the grave is, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to remember the times. In 1988, it was the 1000th anniversary of the baptism of Russia. The church very wisely got everything they could out of the Soviet government and completely used this to spread the faith. This was the beginning of the reawakening of faith in Russia. Certainly there's no way that the government had any idea that the church, when they let them start doing this stuff, that they were going to just take off and start glorifying saints and opening churches and doing it, but they couldn't stop them because it was a worldwide event. So the government opened the door and the church just kicked it down and went running through, and this was one of the things that happened. But still, they had control of the cemetery, so they weren't going to just do anything the church wanted necessarily. But this was a really dynamic time that we're all still taking advantage of, that we're all benefiting from still to this day, I would say. Any other questions? Zhanna, thank you very much for speaking. So as I mentioned, our next lecture will be this Wednesday evening, following the pre-sanctified liturgy. Eduardo Volkov will give the monthly lecture, which is about the apostles. Remember, this year we're having each month a lecture about the apostles, and it will be about St. Andrew the First Called, the apostle who went to Russia. So please join us for that after the pre-sanctified this Wednesday.
Can I remind one more time that